The emergency session of the Zephyrian Confederacy had been going on for 3 days without pause. In the great crystal chamber that floated above the capital city of harmonious winds, representatives from 12 different species sat in circles of desperation. Their homeworlds were burning, their children were being harvested, and they were running out of options. Ambassador Kaylin adjusted her translator device and stood on her 4 delicate legs. Her people, the Melodians, had always been the voice of reason in the Confederacy. But reason meant nothing when facing the Krillak horde. "Honored delegates," she began, her voice carrying the musical tones that had given her species their name. "We have lost the sanctuary worlds. The Krillak consumed every living being on 14 planets in the past month alone. Our combined fleets cannot stop them." A rumble of fear went through the chamber. The Krillak were not just another warrior species. They were something worse. They ate intelligent beings while they were still alive, claiming it made the meat taste better. They turned, captured enemies into living food supplies. Entire civilizations had simply vanished into their biomechanical ships. Elder Vorth of the Peaceful Stones spoke next. His people had been the first to face the Krillak 20 years ago. Ender, Gene C. Only 1 in every 100 of his kind had survived. The latest reports show they have reached the core worlds. Zephyria Prime itself may fall within 6 months. The chamber fell silent. Zephyria Prime was the heart of their civilization. It was where the Confederacy had been born 3,000 years ago, when 12 species had decided that cooperation was better than conquest. If it fell, everything they had built would die with it. "What about the Korathi Military Alliance?" asked Representative Tala, her 3 eyes blinking rapidly in distress. "Surely they will help us." Kaylin shook her head sadly. "The Korathi tried to fight the Krillak 5 years ago. The Horde absorbed their entire military technology and used it against them. The alliance doesn't exist anymore." Another delegate, this one from the ocean world of Deep Current, spoke through his water suit. "The Galactic Council refuses to intervene. They say the Krillak threat is exaggerated. They believe the reports are propaganda." "Fools," muttered Elder Vorth. "They think their distance will protect them. The Krillak will reach them eventually. By then, we will all be gone." The chamber filled with the sounds of despair. Some delegates wept. Others simply stared at the floor. The Confederacy had always solved problems through discussion and compromise. But you could not compromise with a species that wanted to eat you alive. Kaylin had been dreading this moment for weeks. She had spent countless hours researching, looking for any possible solution. What she had found was disturbing and desperate. But it might be their only hope. "There is one option we have not discussed," she said quietly. All eyes turned to her. Even the soft humming of the translation devices seemed to quiet down. "The Terrans," she continued. A shocked silence filled the chamber. Several delegates exchanged worried glances. The name was whispered in dark corners of the galaxy, usually followed by warnings and fear. "You cannot be serious," said Representative Tala. "They are primitives. Barbarians. The reports say they still fight wars on their own planet." "The reports say many things," Kaylin replied. "They say the Terrans are violent beyond measure. They say they practice something called total war, where they destroy everything that belongs to their enemies. They say they have weapons that can crack planets and turn entire solar systems into radioactive waste." Elder Vorth's stone-like skin turned pale gray. "Those are exactly the reasons why we should never contact them. They might decide to conquer us themselves. With respect, Elder, we are already being conquered. The difference is that the Krillak want to eat us. The Terrans, according to every report I have read, seem to have something they call rules of war. They make distinctions between soldiers and civilians. They do not torture prisoners. They do not consume other intelligent species." Kaylin activated her personal datapad and projected information into the center of the chamber. 300 years ago, the Terrans fought what they called the war to end all wars. They used weapons of such terrible power that they themselves were horrified by what they had done. Since then, they have fought smaller conflicts, but they follow strict codes about how war should be conducted. But they still fight wars, Representative Tala pointed out. That proves they are savages. No, Kaylin said firmly. It proves they know how to win wars. And right now, that is exactly what we need. The chamber erupted in argument. Some delegates were horrified by the idea of asking violent primitives for help. Others were curious about these mysterious Terrans, who seemed to be both terrible warriors and oddly principled. A few were simply desperate enough to try anything. After hours of debate, Elder Vorth called for order. If we are truly considering this path, we need to know more. What exactly do you propose, Ambassador Kaylin? Kaylin took a deep breath. I propose that we send a diplomatic mission to Earth, the Terran homeworld. We will explain our situation and ask for their help. We will offer them technology, resources, territory, if they want it. In exchange, we ask them to do what they apparently do best. Which is? Asked Representative Tala. Make war, Kaylin replied simply. The Terrans seem to understand violence in ways that we do not. Perhaps that understanding can save us. The vote was close. 7 species voted in favor, 5 against. It was barely enough to authorize the mission, but it was enough. As the session ended and delegates began to leave, Elder Vorth approached Kaylin. I pray that we are not making a terrible mistake, he said. What if the cure proves worse than the disease? Kaylin looked out through the crystal walls at the night sky. Somewhere out there, the Krillic fleets were moving closer. Somewhere else, entire worlds were screaming as they were consumed alive. Elder, she said softly, I have studied every report about the Terrans I could find. Yes, they are violent. Yes, they are dangerous. But in every account, when they fight for reasons. They protect the innocent. They defend the weak. They seem to have something that even we, peaceful species, sometimes lack. What is that? They seem to understand that sometimes violence is the only way to stop greater violence. They appear to hate war so much that they have become very, very good at ending wars quickly. Elder Vorth was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke. When do you leave for Earth? Tomorrow, Kaylin replied. The Krillic fleets will reach the Harmony system in 3 months. If the Terrans are going to help us, they need to know soon. And if they refuse? Kaylin looked at him with all 4 of her eyes. Then, we die with dignity, knowing we tried everything. The next morning, a small Confederacy ship left Zephyria Prime and headed toward the outer spiral arm of the galaxy. Toward a small yellow star. Toward a blue and green world called Earth. Toward humanity. The Confederacy ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system and immediately found itself surrounded by human warships. They had appeared so quickly that Kaylin wondered if they had been waiting. Unknown vessel. Came a voice through the communication system. The translation software struggled with the harsh consonants of the human language. This is Captain Rodriguez of the UEN Defender. State your business in Terran space. This is Ambassador Kaylin of the Zephyrian Confederacy, she replied, trying to keep her musical voice steady. We request an audience with your leadership. We have traveled far to ask for your help. There was a long pause. Kaylin could see the human ships moving around her vessel like predators circling prey. They were smaller than Confederacy ships, but looked somehow more dangerous. Their hulls were dark metal, instead of the bright colors favored by most civilized species. They bristled with what could only be weapons. Ambassador, Captain Rodriguez said finally, you are cleared to proceed to Earth. A escort will guide you. Please understand that any aggressive action will result in your immediate destruction. The threat was delivered in such a calm, matter-of-fact tone that it sent chills through Kaylin's entire body. These humans spoke of destruction the way her people spoke of the weather. The journey to Earth took 2 days. Kaylin spent the time studying every piece of information she could find about humanity. What she discovered both terrified and fascinated her. Humans were young. Their civilization was barely 5,000 years old, compared to the Confederacy's 30,000. They had only achieved faster than light travel 300 years ago. They should have been primitive barbarians. Instead, they had become something that made even the Krillak look simple. Humans did not just fight wars. They studied war like it was a science. They had academies dedicated to teaching military strategy. They wrote books analyzing every battle they had ever fought, looking for ways to improve. They treated the art of warfare like the Confederacy treated music or philosophy. Even more disturbing, they seemed to enjoy it. Not the killing, the reports suggested, but the challenge, the problem-solving, the competition. They played games that simulated warfare for entertainment. They wrote stories about battles and heroes. War was woven into their culture in ways that peaceful species could barely understand. When Kaylin's ship finally reached Earth, she was amazed by what she saw. The planet was beautiful, with blue oceans and white clouds, but it was also covered with the infrastructure of a military civilization. Orbital defense platforms surrounded the world like deadly jewelry. Space elevators carried materials to shipyards where new warships were being built. Even from orbit, she could see the geometric patterns of military bases on the planet's surface. The humans who met her at the orbital station were nothing like what she had expected. They were polite, even friendly. They offered her food and made sure she was comfortable. They seemed genuinely interested in her people and her mission. But their eyes were different. When Kaylin looked into human eyes, she saw something that made her understand why other species feared them. She saw the gaze of predators. Not cruel or evil, but utterly focused. When a human decided something needed to be done, she realized, they would do it completely. The meeting with human leadership took place in a room deep inside the orbital station. The walls were covered with screens showing star maps and fleet positions. Humans, it seemed, always knew where their military forces were located. Ambassador Kaylin, said the woman who introduced herself as Admiral Sarah Chen. Welcome to Earth. We understand you have a problem with something called the Krillak Horde. You know about them? Kaylin asked, surprised. We know about everything, replied another human, General Michael Torres. We've been watching the Krillak expansion for 20 years. We've been wondering when someone would ask for help. Admiral Chen activated a holographic display that showed the entire galactic arm. Red markers indicated Krillak-controlled territory. It was larger than Kaylin had realized, and it was growing. Tell us about them, Admiral Chen said simply. For the next hour, Kaylin explained everything. The Krillak biology, their technology, their tactics, their habit of consuming intelligent beings alive. She showed the humans recordings from destroyed worlds, testimonies from survivors, tactical analyses of failed battles against the Horde. The humans listened without interruption. They asked precise questions about Krillak weapons, their ship designs, their command structure. They wanted to know about supply lines, communication methods, and population centers. They approached the problem like engineers studying a machine they intended to take apart. When Kaylin finished, Admiral Chen was quiet for a long moment. Then she looked directly at the ambassador with those predator eyes. How many of our ships do you think it would take? She asked. I beg your pardon? To defeat the Krillak Horde. How many human ships do you think we would need? Kaylin was confused. Admiral, the Krillak have consumed 14 species. They control hundreds of worlds. They have thousands of ships. The Confederacy believes it would take the combined military might of half the galaxy to stop them. General Torres smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. Ambassador, you're thinking about this wrong. You're thinking about fighting them ship to ship, world to world, like a traditional war. That's not how humans fight wars. I don't understand. Admiral Chen stood and walked to the star map. The Confederacy fights wars, like a formal duel. Honor, rules, fair play. You meet your enemy in open battle and try to prove you're stronger. She touched the map, and the display zoomed in on Krillek space. Humans fight wars like a virus fights an immune system. We don't face our enemy's strength. We find their weaknesses and exploit them. We don't fight fair. We fight to win. But the Krillak are stronger than us, Kaylin protested. They have more ships, more soldiers, better technology. In many areas. Strength is not just about numbers, General Torres said. It's about knowing how to use what you have. And humans are very good at that. Admiral Chen turned back to Kaylin. Ambassador, I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to think carefully before you answer. If we agree to help you, are you prepared for what that means? What do you mean? We don't fight limited wars. When humans go to war, we go to war completely. We will not stop until our enemy is defeated utterly. The Krillak horde will cease to exist as a threat. Forever. Are you prepared for that level of thoroughness? Kaylin thought about the burning worlds, the consumed populations, the children who had been harvested like crops. Yes, she said firmly. We are prepared for anything that stops them. Admiral Chen nodded. Then we accept your request for assistance. General Torres will coordinate with your military leadership to understand your current dispositions and capabilities. I will begin mobilizing our forces immediately. How many ships will you send? Kaylin asked. All of them. Admiral Chen replied simply. Kaylin was stunned. All of them? But what about defending Earth? What about your other territories? General Torres laughed, and this time the sound was genuinely amused. Ambassador, you still don't understand. The best defense is often a good offense. If we eliminate the Krillak threat completely, we don't need to worry about defending against them. Besides, Admiral Chen added, this won't take very long. As Kaylin left the meeting, her mind was spinning. The humans had agreed to help, but she was beginning to realize that she might not understand what she had just set in motion. Behind her, she heard Admiral Chen speaking to her staff. Begin Stage 1 mobilization. I want every fleet combat ready within the month. And contact Research Division. It's time to find out everything we can about Krillak biology. Kaylin shivered. The way the Admiral said, biology, made it sound less like scientific curiosity and more like a hunter studying prey. The Confederacy had asked for help. Now they would discover what human help actually looked like. The first human fleet arrived at the besieged Confederacy world of New Garden 3 weeks after the meeting on Earth. Kaylin watched from the bridge of a Confederacy command ship as 200 human vessels dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. They're so small, commented Commander Veltara, the military liaison assigned to work with the humans. Each of those ships is half the size of our cruisers. Kaylin had learned enough about human thinking to be worried by this observation. Commander, I don't think size is the most important factor to humans. She was proven right within minutes. The Krillak forces surrounding New Garden had been systematically destroying the planet's defensive positions for 2 months. Their massive bioships looked like enormous insects, bristling with organic weapons and armor that could regenerate damage. For weeks, they had been landing troops on the surface to harvest the population at their leisure. The human fleet did not announce its presence. It simply opened fire. Kaylin had seen space battles before. They were usually slow, methodical affairs, where large ships exchanged energy blasts at long range until one side's shields failed. The Krillak fought this way, using their superior numbers and biological weapons to gradually wear down enemies. The humans fought differently. Instead of energy weapons, they used kinetic projectiles. Metal slugs accelerated to incredible speeds by magnetic launchers. The first volley of human fire struck the outermost Krillak ships before they even knew humans were present. The solid projectiles punched through bio-armor like it was paper, causing massive internal damage that the Krillak regeneration systems couldn't repair fast enough. "How are they moving so fast?" Commander Veltara asked in amazement. The human ships were indeed moving faster than should have been possible. They had approached the battle zone at maximum speed, and instead of slowing down, they were using the planet's gravity to slingshot themselves around New Garden in complex orbital maneuvers. They were fighting while moving at velocities that would have torn apart most civilized ships. "Unknown Confederacy vessel," came a voice over the communication system. "This is Admiral Rodriguez of the Earth Strike Fleet. Please clear the combat zone. We are engaging hostile forces." Kai-Lin activated her communicator. "Admiral Rodriguez, this is Ambassador Kai-Lin. We are here to observe and coordinate with your forces." "Negative, Ambassador. You are here to stay out of our way." "Rodriguez, out." The communication cut off. Commander Veltara looked offended. His words were interrupted by the most spectacular display of military precision either of them had ever witnessed. The human fleet had split into 3 groups. One group continued the kinetic bombardment of the main Krillak force. The second group dove toward the planet's surface, engaging the Krillak landing forces with weapons that seemed designed specifically for ground support. The third group did something that made Kai-Lin's blood freeze. They began capturing Krillak ships. "That's impossible," Commander Veltara whispered. "You can't board Krillak bioships. The internal atmosphere is toxic. The corridors are designed for insectoid physiology. The entire ship is basically a living organism that fights back against intruders." But the humans were doing it anyway. Small human assault craft attached themselves to damaged Krillak vessels, like parasites. They cut holes in the biohulls and inserted boarding parties wearing what looked like mechanical armor suits. "What are they doing?" Kai-Lin asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Commander Veltara was monitoring the communication channels. His face went pale as he listened to the reports. They're taking prisoners. Living Krillak prisoners. And they're downloading data from the bioship neural networks." Kai-Lin felt sick. She had studied enough human military doctrine to understand what this meant. Humans didn't just fight wars. They learned from them. Every battle was a chance to gather intelligence about their enemies. Every captured prisoner was a source of information about enemy plans, technology, and weaknesses. The Krillak had never faced an enemy that treated warfare as a learning experience. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it ended, every Krillak ship was either destroyed or captured. The human fleet had suffered minimal damage. More importantly, they had achieved something the Confederacy had thought impossible. They had stopped a Krillak assault completely. Admiral Rodriguez contacted the Confederacy command ship after the fighting ended. This time, his voice was more polite, but somehow more frightening. "Ambassador Kai-Lin, we have secured the New Garden system. Our preliminary analysis of captured Krillak technology and personnel has provided valuable intelligence. We will be moving to engage additional Krillak forces within the week." "Admiral," Kai-Lin replied carefully, "your tactics are quite different from what we expected. The boarding actions, the prisoner taking. This is not how civilized species conduct warfare." There was a pause. When Admiral Rodriguez spoke again, his voice was colder. "Ambassador, with respect, civilized species are being eaten alive by the Krillak horde. Our methods may seem harsh to you, but they work. And right now, working is more important than being civilized. But surely there are rules of war that—" "There are," the Admiral interrupted. "Human rules. We don't target civilians. We don't torture prisoners for entertainment. We don't consume other intelligent species. But we also don't fight with one hand tied behind our backs, while our enemies use every advantage they can find." Commander Veltara leaned over to Kai-Lin and whispered, Ask him about the prisoners. What are they going to do with the captured Krillak? Kai Lin relayed the question. Admiral Rodriguez's answer sent chills through both Confederacy officers. The prisoners are being interrogated to determine Krillak fleet positions, supply lines, and strategic plans. Our xenobiologists are studying their physiology to develop more effective weapons. Our psychologists are analyzing their command structure and decision-making processes to predict their responses to various tactical scenarios. And after that? Kaylin asked. After that, they will be held according to human standards for prisoners of war until the conflict ends. They will be fed, given medical care, and treated humanely, despite the fact that their species has committed genocide against multiple civilizations. The communication ended. Commander Veltara stared at Kaylin with wide eyes. Did you hear what he said? He whispered. They're studying Krillak biology to develop better weapons. They're analyzing their psychology to predict their behavior. They're treating this entire war like a scientific experiment. Kaylin nodded slowly. She was beginning to understand something that terrified her. The Confederacy had asked humans for help because they were supposedly good at violence. But that wasn't quite right. Humans weren't just good at violence. They were good at learning. And they applied that learning to everything, including war. Commander, she said quietly, I think we need to send a message back to the Confederacy Council. What kind of message? A warning, Kaylin replied. The humans are going to win this war. I'm certain of it now. But I'm also certain that when they're finished, the galaxy is going to be a very different place. As the human fleet prepared to jump to their next target, Kaylin watched their ships moving in perfect coordination. Each vessel knew exactly where it needed to be and what it needed to do. There was no wasted motion, no hesitation, no confusion. The Krillak horde had spent 20 years spreading across the galaxy like a plague, consuming everything in their path. They had thought themselves unstoppable because no civilized species had been able to resist them. But humans, Kaylin realized, were not a civilized species in the way the galaxy understood civilization. They were something else entirely. They were a species that had turned warfare into an art form, intelligence gathering into a science, and military coordination into a kind of deadly dance. The Krillak were about to learn what happened when an unstoppable force met an immovable object. Except in this case, the immovable object was very, very good at moving when it wanted to. The Krillak High Swarm had ruled over 14 different species for more than 2 centuries. They had perfected the art of conquest through biological superiority and overwhelming numbers. Their enemies always broke eventually. Their enemies always surrendered. Their enemies always became food. The humans were different. War leader Skrixvok studied the tactical displays in the command chamber of the hive ship Endless Hunger. For 3 months, the humans had been systematically destroying Krillak forces throughout the outer territories. They didn't fight like any enemy the swarm had ever faced. War leader, chittered Sub-Commander Kralik, his antenna twitching with nervousness. We have lost contact with the 7th Assault Swarm. They were engaging human forces in the Tertia system. Destroyed, Skrixvok asked, though he already knew the answer. Worse. Captured. The humans took the entire swarm alive. They're holding our people on some kind of prison ship. Skrixvok's mandibles clicked together in frustration. The humans had an incomprehensible obsession with taking prisoners. No civilized species captured Krillak alive. The risk was too great. Krillak biology made them dangerous even in captivity. Their acidic blood could eat through most containment systems. Their natural aggression made them impossible to hold safely. But somehow, the humans managed it. What news from the science case? Skrixvok demanded. Sub-Commander Kralik's posture became even more submissive. The science case requests more time to analyze human weapons and tactics. They say human technology operates on principles they do not understand. Explain. The humans use what they call kinetic weapons. Instead of energy beams, they fire solid projectiles. Our bio-armor is designed to absorb and dissipate energy attacks. It cannot stop high-velocity metal slugs. The science case believes this is a primitive technology. But what? But the humans have somehow made primitive technology more effective than our advanced bioweapons. They calculate trajectory, wind resistance, gravitational effects, and target movement with impossible precision. Each shot is perfectly placed. They waste nothing. Scrixvok turned to study the tactical display again. Red markers showed the positions of human fleets. There were fewer than 1,000 human ships total. The Krillak horde had over 50,000 vessels. By any rational calculation, the humans should have been overwhelmed weeks ago. Instead, they were winning. War leader, came another voice. This one belonged to Mindspeaker Velsith, the swarm's chief intelligence gatherer. We have received reports from our spies in Confederacy space. What do they say? The humans are not just fighting us. They are studying us. They have captured hundreds of our people and are conducting what they call research. They are learning our biology, our psychology, our technology, our tactics. Scrixvok felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's temperature. What kind of research? Medical examinations, psychological testing. They have learned how our hive mind communication works. They understand our reproductive cycles. They know our nutritional requirements and our biological weaknesses. Impossible. Our biology is too complex for primitive minds to understand. War leader. The human minds appear to be anything but primitive. They have scientists who specialize in alien biology. They have computers that can process information faster than our own neural networks. They approach learning the way we approach hunting. With complete focus and unlimited patience. Subcommander Kralik spoke up again. There is more disturbing news, War Leader. Our forces in the Meridian sector report that humans have begun using new weapons. Weapons that seem specifically designed to target Krillak physiology. Scrixvok's compound eyes focused sharply on his subordinate. Explain. Sonic weapons tuned to frequencies that disrupt our exoskeleton structure. Chemical agents that interfere with our pheromone communication systems. Electromagnetic pulses that overload our neural networks. It is as if they have studied our weaknesses and created weapons specifically to exploit them. The war leader was quiet for a long time. Around him, the command chamber hummed with the sounds of a massive bioship in operation. Thousands of Krillak worked throughout the vessel. Each one connected to the others through the hive mind that had made the swarm invincible for so long. But for the first time in his life, Scrixvok wondered if the hive mind might be a weakness instead of a strength. Mind speaker, he said finally. How do the humans coordinate their forces? They do not share a hive mind. How do they achieve such perfect tactical coordination? Velsith's antenna twitched. This is perhaps the most disturbing aspect of human military doctrine, War Leader. They do not rely on instinctive coordination. They train for it. Each human military unit practices working together until their responses become automatic. They use technology to share information instantly across their entire fleet. But most importantly, they teach independent thinking to their commanders. Independent thinking? How can that possibly be effective? Each human commander is taught to analyze situations and make decisions without waiting for orders from higher authority. When circumstances change, they adapt immediately. When opportunities arise, they exploit them without delay. They coordinate through communication and planning, not through biological compulsion. Scrixvok felt another chill. The Krillak horde's greatest strength had always been their unity of purpose. Every member of the swarm thought and acted as part of a larger organism. They never hesitated, never questioned orders, never acted independently. but they also never adapted quickly to unexpected situations. War leader, Subcommander Kralik, interrupted urgently. We are receiving reports from the home clusters. Human forces have penetrated deep into swarm space. They are attacking our breeding worlds. That is impossible, Scrixvox snapped. The home clusters are protected by our most powerful fleets. The defensive positions are impregnable. Du Vi. The humans are not attacking the defensive positions directly, Kralik replied, his voice shaking. They are bypassing them entirely. They use small, fast ships to strike at targets the defenders cannot reach in time. They attack supply depots, communication relays, breeding facilities. They are targeting our infrastructure instead of our military forces. Scrixvox stared at the tactical display as new red markers appeared throughout Krillak space. The humans were not fighting a conventional war. They were not trying to defeat the swarm's military forces through direct confrontation. They were dismantling Krillak civilization piece by piece. War leader. Mind speaker. Velsith said, quietly. I believe the humans are implementing something they call strategic warfare. Instead of fighting battles, they are fighting the war itself. They are attacking our ability to sustain military operations, rather than our ability to fight individual engagements. But that's... Scrixvac began, then stopped. He had been about to say it was uncivilized. But civilized warfare was apparently something only civilized species practiced. And the humans had demonstrated that civilized warfare was ineffective against an enemy like the Krillak. War leader. Came a new voice from the communication system. This is Fleet Master Vorkhan, from the Second Battle Swarm. We are engaging human forces in the Proxima system. They are using weapons we have never seen before. Biological weapons. Scrixvox felt his blood freeze. Biological weapons? What kind? Weapons designed specifically to target Krillak physiology, war leader. Viral agents that attack our respiratory systems. Bacterial infections that dissolve our exoskeleton armor. Pheromone disruptors that break our hive mind coordination. War leader. They are using our own biology against us. The command chamber fell silent, except for the humming of bioship systems. Every Krillak present understood what they were hearing. For 2 centuries, the swarm had been the apex predator of the galaxy. They had consumed species after species, growing stronger with each conquest. Now they were facing an enemy that had studied them like laboratory specimens and created weapons specifically designed to kill them. War leader, Subcommander Kralik whispered. What are your orders? Scrixvox looked at the tactical display one more time. Human forces were advancing on multiple fronts. Krillak territory was shrinking. Supply lines were being cut. Breeding worlds were under attack. And somewhere out there, human scientists were studying captured Krillak prisoners, learning new ways to kill them more efficiently. For the first time in swarm history, Scrixvac considered something that no Krillak war leader had ever contemplated before. Retreat. But even as the thought formed, he knew it was too late. The humans had demonstrated that they could track Krillak ships across interstellar distances. They could find hidden bases and secret supply depots. They could coordinate attacks across hundreds of light years of space. There would be no retreat, no negotiation. The humans had come to end the Krillak horde, and they had brought the tools to do it. Ambassador Kaylin stood on the observation deck of the Confederacy flagship Harmony's Voice and watched the final battle of the Krillak War. She had thought she understood what human warfare looked like after witnessing their earlier victories. She had been wrong. This was not a battle. This was an execution. The Krillak had gathered their remaining forces around their homeworld, a massive planet covered in biohives and breeding chambers. Nearly 20,000 ships surrounded the world in desperate defense. It was everything the swarm had left after 6 months of systematic destruction at human hands. The human fleet numbered less than 800 vessels. Ambassador, said Captain Song Wei Min, the human liaison officer assigned to keep the Confederacy observers informed, Admiral Chen recommends that you prepare your people for what they are about to witness. What do you mean? Kaylin asked. Captain Song's expression was carefully neutral. The Admiral is implementing final protocol. This will be the complete and permanent elimination of the Krillak threat. Before Kaylin could ask for clarification, the human fleet began its attack. The first wave was something the humans called psychological warfare. Instead of attacking immediately, they broadcast messages directly into Krillak communication networks. The content of those messages made Kaylin's skin crawl. The humans had learned the Krillak language perfectly. They knew every detail of Krillak biology, psychology, and culture. And they used that knowledge to deliver threats that were specifically designed to terrify an entire species. They described, in precise technical detail, how they planned to sterilize every Krillak breeding ground. They explained the biological weapons they had developed to target Krillak genetics specifically. They listed the names and locations of every major swarm leader they had captured or killed. They broadcast recordings of captured Krillak prisoners, explaining human interrogation techniques. Why are they doing this? Asked Commander Veltara, who had been assigned to observe alongside Kaylin. Why not simply attack? Captain Song heard the question and answered without being asked. Because fear is a weapon. Commander, the Krillak have used terror tactics against civilian populations for centuries. They made entire species afraid to resist. Now they get to experience fear themselves. The psychological assault lasted exactly 1 hour. When it ended, the Krillak fleet was in chaos. Hive mind coordination was breaking down as individual ships tried to flee. Some vessels were firing on each other in panic. The perfect unity that had made the swarm invincible was crumbling. Then the humans began the real attack. Kai Lin had seen human kinetic weapons in action before, but nothing had prepared her for this. The human fleet had brought something they called planet crackers. Weapons designed not just to destroy targets, but to render entire worlds uninhabitable. The first barrage of kinetic projectiles struck the Krillak homeworld with the force of multiple nuclear explosions. But these were not random strikes. Human targeting computers had identified every breeding facility, every hive complex, every military installation on the planet's surface. Each shot was precisely calculated to cause maximum damage to Krillak infrastructure while making the world toxic to Krillak biology. The defending fleet tried to respond. But human ships were no longer where the Krillak expected them to be. They had used something called micro-jumps to relocate instantly to new positions. When Krillak weapons fired at where human ships had been, they found only empty space. How are they doing that? Commander Veltara asked in amazement. Captain Song smiled grimly. Humans don't believe in fair fights. Commander, we believe in winning fights. Our ships are equipped with short-range, faster-than-light drives that can move us a few thousand kilometers instantly. No other species has developed this technology because no other species considered it necessary. The battle, if it could be called that, continued for 3 hours. When it ended, the Krillak homeworld was a burning wasteland. Every ship in the defending fleet was destroyed or captured. The Krillak horde, which had terrorized the galaxy for 2 centuries, had ceased to exist as a military force. But Admiral Chen was not finished. All units, came her voice over the communication system, implement containment protocol. No Krillak vessel or individual is to leave this system alive. Kaylin felt her blood freeze. Captain Song, what does that mean? It means, Ambassador, that humanity has decided the Krillak represent an existential threat that cannot be allowed to survive. Every member of their species in this system will be eliminated to ensure they cannot rebuild or take revenge in the future. That's genocide, Commander Veltara whispered. Captain Song turned to look at both Confederacy officers. His expression was completely serious. Commander, the Krillak committed genocide against 14 different species. They consumed billions of intelligent beings. They turned entire civilizations into food supplies. From a human perspective, they have forfeited any right to continued existence. But surely some of them could be rehabilitated or contained, or— No, Captain Song interrupted. Human strategic analysts have determined that Krillak biology and psychology make peaceful coexistence impossible. They are evolutionary apex predators that view all other intelligent species as prey. As long as any of them survive, they will eventually rebuild and resume their expansion. Kaylin watched in horror as human ships systematically hunted down every escaping Krillak vessel. There was no pursuit or chase. Human sensors could track Krillak bioships across interstellar distances. Human computers could calculate exactly where fleeing vessels would emerge from faster-than-light travel. Human weapons could destroy targets before the Krillak even knew they were being attacked. It was not warfare. It was extermination conducted with industrial efficiency. When the last Krillak ship was destroyed, Admiral Chen contacted the Confederacy flagship directly. Ambassador Kaylin, the Krillak threat has been permanently eliminated. Human forces are now conducting cleanup operations to ensure no surviving individuals remain in this system. We estimate the operation will be complete within 48 hours. Admiral, Kaylin said, struggling to keep her voice steady. What you have done here, the complete destruction of an entire species. Surely this violates some kind of galactic law or moral principle. Admiral Chen's voice was calm and matter-of-fact. Ambassador, the Krillak made their choice when they decided to become a species of genocidal predators. Humanity simply responded appropriately to that choice. We have eliminated a threat that would have eventually consumed every intelligent species in the galaxy, including yours. But the moral implications. The moral implications, Ambassador, are quite clear. We have saved millions of civilizations that would have been destroyed by the Krillak in the future. From a human ethical standpoint, failing to eliminate them completely would have been immoral. It would have condemned countless innocent beings to death. The communication ended. Kaylin stood in stunned silence, trying to process what she had witnessed. Captain Song approached her quietly. Ambassador, I know this is difficult for peaceful species to understand. But humans learned long ago that some enemies cannot be reasoned with, cannot be reformed, and cannot be safely contained. The only option is complete elimination. And you feel no guilt about this? Commander Veltara asked. Guilt? Captain Song considered the question seriously. We feel regret that it was necessary. But guilt? No. We saved the galaxy from a threat that would have consumed everything given time. That was the right thing to do, regardless of how unpleasant the method. 3 days later, the human fleet prepared to return to Earth. Admiral Chen held a final meeting with Confederacy leadership. The Krillak horde has been eliminated, she reported. We have destroyed their homeworld, their fleets, their breeding facilities, and their technology. No genetic material or cultural artifacts remain that could be used to rebuild their civilization. The threat is permanently ended. What about the territories they controlled? Asked Elder Vorth, who had traveled from Zephyria Prime to witness the conclusion of the war. Those territories are now available for resettlement by species the Krillak displaced. Human forces will provide security during the transition period, but we claim no territory for ourselves. Kaylin found herself asking the question that had haunted her for days. Admiral, your people have demonstrated the ability to destroy any military force in the galaxy. You could conquer every civilization if you chose to. Why don't you? Admiral Chen looked at her with those predator eyes that Kaylin had come to know so well. Because conquest is not our goal, Ambassador. Protection is our goal. The strong should protect the weak, not exploit them. That is what humans believe. But the power you possess, power without moral restraint, is tyranny, Admiral Chen interrupted. Humans learned that lesson on our own world long ago. We became good at warfare not because we love violence, but because we hate injustice. And the greatest injustice would be for us to become the very thing we fought to destroy. As the human fleet departed Krillak space, Kaylin reflected on what had transpired. The Confederacy had asked for help stopping a genocidal enemy. They had received that help, but they had also learned something that would forever change how the galaxy viewed humanity. Humans were not just another military species. They were something far more dangerous and far more valuable. They were a species with the power to destroy civilizations and the moral clarity to know when that power should be used. The galaxy was safer now, but it was also a galaxy where everyone understood that somewhere out there, humanity was watching. And if another species chose the path of genocide and predation, humanity would respond with the same terrible efficiency they had shown the Krillak. It was a comforting thought for peaceful species. It was a terrifying thought for anyone who might consider becoming humanity's enemy. The age of the Krillak horde was over. The age of human protection had begun,